Imagine a classroom that doesn't exist on any map. A room where the walls whisper your deepest fears, and every student who enters is never the same again. Tonight, we uncover the chilling secret of the 13th classroom. Are you brave enough to step inside? Welcome, dear listeners, to Nightmare for Giggles, where your darkest dreams come to life. I am the Tales Keeper, your guide through the twisted corridors of terror, where each story is more spine-chilling than the last. Tonight, we begin our journey into the horror high school nightmare stories, following Adam, a new transfer student at Westbrook High. But this school holds secrets darker than you can imagine, and Adam is about to learn that some mysteries are better left unsolved. Before we begin, remember, for the best audio experience, use headphones and close your eyes as you lay in bed. Let the shadows of the night envelop you, and join me as we enter the 13th classroom, where the line between reality and nightmare is blurred. Adam stood at the edge of the schoolyard, his gaze fixed on the sprawling building that loomed before him. Westbrook High School wasn't anything extraordinary, just a typical, aging structure with bricks that had seen better days and windows that reflected the fading afternoon sun. But there was something about the place that made his skin crawl, an unsettling feeling that he couldn't quite shake. He was new to the town, having moved in with his aunt after his parents' sudden passing. His aunt was kind, but the weight of loss was still fresh, and Adam found himself feeling more alone than ever. Perhaps that's why he was so eager to distract himself with something, anything, that could take his mind off the emptiness he felt inside. It was on his third day at Westbrook that he first heard the rumors, whispers of a 13th classroom hidden somewhere in the school. It was a story passed around by students with a mix of fear and excitement, something that they dared each other to investigate but never actually did. According to the legend, the 13th classroom didn't appear on any map, and those who entered it were never the same again. Most dismissed it as nonsense, just another urban legend meant to scare the freshmen. But Adam, ever the skeptic, was intrigued. He had always prided himself on his rational mind, on his ability to debunk myths and uncover the truth. If this was just another ghost story, he would expose it for what it was, a fabrication. That afternoon, he decided to stay late at school. He told himself it was to catch up on homework, but deep down, he knew it was because of the classroom. He needed to know if there was any truth to the story. The hallways were eerily quiet as he walked through them, the usual bustle of students replaced by an unsettling silence. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch and warp as he moved. Adam had studied the school map meticulously, trying to figure out where a hidden room could be located, but nothing stood out. It wasn't until he reached the east wing, an older part of the building rarely used anymore, that he noticed something odd. There was a door at the end of the hallway, slightly ajar, that he had never seen before. He was certain it hadn't been there earlier in the day. His heart raced as he approached it, the hairs on the back of his neck standing on end. The door was old, the wood dark and splintered with a tarnished brass handle that looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Adam hesitated for a moment, a sliver of doubt creeping into his mind. But he quickly brushed it aside. It was just a door, nothing more. He pushed it open and stepped inside. The room was dark, the only light coming from the hallway behind him. He fumbled for a switch, finding one on the wall, and flicked it on. A single overhead light buzzed to life, illuminating the space. It was a classroom, just like any other. Desks were arranged in neat rows, a chalkboard covered in old, smudged writing at the front. But something felt wrong. The air was thick and oppressive, as if the room itself was alive and watching him. Adam walked slowly down the aisle, his footsteps echoing in the silence. He couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't alone, that something unseen was lurking just out of sight. He reached the front of the room and turned to face the desks, noticing for the first time that each one was engraved with names, dozens of them, carved deep into the wood. Curiosity piqued, Adam ran his fingers over the names. Some were faded and worn, barely legible, while others looked fresh, as if they had been carved recently. He felt a chill run down his spine when he saw a name he recognized. Sarah Keller. She had been a student at Westbrook, a senior who had gone missing last year. Her disappearance had been a mystery, one that the town never quite moved on from. Adam pulled out his phone, intending to take a picture, but the device wouldn't turn on. The battery was dead, despite being fully charged just minutes before. He frowned, unnerved, but continued his investigation. The chalkboard at the front of the room was covered in strange symbols, none of which made any sense to him. They were unlike anything he had seen before, almost like a language from some ancient civilization. As he stared at them, he began to feel dizzy, a strange sensation of vertigo washing over him. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw movement. He turned quickly, but there was nothing there, just the empty desks and the oppressive silence. Adam shook his head, trying to clear the fog that seemed to be clouding his mind. He needed to get out of there. This was a mistake. As he made his way back to the door, he noticed something else. There was no handle on the inside. Panic set in as he tried to push the door open, but it wouldn't budge. He was trapped. "Calm down," he whispered to himself, forcing his breathing to steady. "There's got to be another way out." He scanned the room, his eyes landing on a small window at the back. It was high up, but if he could climb onto one of the desks, he might be able to reach it. Desperation fueled his movements as he scrambled onto a desk, but the moment he did, the overhead light flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. Adam froze, his heart pounding in his chest. The darkness was complete, suffocating. He couldn't see a thing, but he could hear something, whispers low and insistent coming from all around him. "Who's there?" he demanded, his voice trembling. The whispers grew louder, more urgent, but he couldn't make out any words. He felt a cold breeze brush against his skin, and the sensation of something moving past him, close enough to touch. In a blind panic, Adam jumped down from the desk, groping in the dark for anything he could use to defend himself. His hand closed around a piece of chalk that had fallen to the floor, and in that moment, the whispers stopped. The silence was more terrifying than the noise had been. Then, just as suddenly as they had stopped, the whispers returned, this time in a clear, unmistakable voice. "Get out." The command was followed by a loud crash, as if something had been thrown across the room. Adam flinched, but he didn't move. He couldn't. It was as if his feet were rooted to the spot. "Get out." The voice was closer now, almost in his ear. The terror was overwhelming, paralyzing him. But he knew he had to move, had to get out of that room before whatever was in there with him decided to do more than just whisper. With a surge of adrenaline, Adam bolted for the window, climbing onto the desk once more. He felt along the wall for the window latch, his fingers trembling uncontrollably. He found it, but it was rusted shut. "Please, please," he muttered, wrenching at it with all his strength. Finally, it gave way, and the window creaked open just enough for him to squeeze through. He didn't waste a second. He hoisted himself up and out of the window, landing hard on the ground outside. The cool night air hit him like a wave, and he gasped, sucking in deep breaths of relief. But the relief was short-lived. As he looked up, he realized that he wasn't in the schoolyard anymore. He was in a different place entirely. A desolate landscape of dead trees and swirling fog. The school building was gone, replaced by a twisted, nightmarish version of itself that loomed ominously in the distance. Adam felt a deep, primal fear take hold of him. This wasn't possible. He had just been inside a classroom in a normal school, and now he was... where? The whispers started again, but this time they came from the fog. Shapes began to emerge, shadowy figures that moved with an unnatural, jerky motion. They were coming toward him. "No." Adam breathed, backing away. "This isn't real. It can't be real." But the figures kept coming, their forms becoming clearer as they neared. They were students, or at least they had been. Their faces were twisted in agony, their eyes hollow and lifeless. Some were missing limbs, others had grotesque wounds that should have been fatal. Adam turned and ran. He had no idea where he was going, but anywhere was better than here. The ground beneath him was uneven, filled with roots that seemed to reach out to trip him. The fog was thick, making it difficult to see more than a few feet ahead. but the whispers followed him, relentless. Adam. He stumbled and fell, scraping his hands and knees on the rough ground. The pain was sharp, but it grounded him, kept him from losing his mind completely. Adam. The voice was different this time. It wasn't a whisper. It was clear, familiar. He looked up and saw a figure standing ahead of him, just beyond the fog. It was a girl, her features hidden in the shadows. But there was something about her that made Adam's heart skip a beat. "Sarah?" he called out, his voice cracking. The girl didn't respond, but she didn't move away either. She just stood there, watching him. Adam struggled to his feet, every instinct telling him to run in the opposite direction, but something about the girl kept him rooted to the spot. "Sarah?" he called again, taking a hesitant step forward. The girl stepped out of the shadows, and Adam's blood ran cold. It was Sarah Keller, but she was wrong. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her eyes were dark voids that seemed to swallow the light. Her clothes were tattered, stained with something dark and viscous. "Adam," she said, her voice hollow and distant. "You shouldn't be here." I don't understand," Adam stammered, taking a step back. "What happened to you? Where are we?" "This is where they keep us," Sarah replied, her tone emotionless. "All of us who entered the 13th classroom." Adam's mind reeled. "But you disappeared last year. Everyone thought you ran away or something." "I wish I had," she said, her voice tinged with a sadness that cut through Adam's fear. "But the classroom, it took me. It takes everyone who tries to find it." "This can't be real," Adam said, shaking his head. "I need to wake up. This is just a nightmare." "It's not a nightmare," Sarah said, her expression softening slightly. "But you can still escape. You have to find the door. It's the only way out." Adam looked around, but there was no door, no building, just the endless fog and the dead trees. "What door? Where?" "The door is the key," she said, her voice fading. "Find it before it's too late." And with that, Sarah began to dissolve into the fog, her form fading until there was nothing left. "Sarah!" Adam shouted, but there was no response. Panic surged through him once more. He had to find the door, but where? He began to run again, this time with purpose, searching for anything that might lead him back to the real world. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, as the shadowy figures closed in around him. He could feel their cold presence, their hunger, as they reached out to him with skeletal hands. Just when he thought all hope was lost, he saw it, a door standing alone in the middle of the fog, its surface covered in the same strange symbols that had been on the chalkboard. Without thinking, Adam sprinted toward it, the figures closing in from all sides. He reached out and grabbed the handle, pulling the door open with all his strength. A blinding light spilled out, and for a moment, everything was consumed by it. Then, just as suddenly, the light faded, and Adam found himself lying on the floor of the classroom, gasping for breath. The room was exactly as it had been before, the desks, the chalkboard, the oppressive atmosphere, everything. But something was different. He could feel it. Adam stumbled to his feet, his heart still racing. He looked around, half expecting the shadowy figures to be there. But there was nothing. Just silence. He needed to leave. Now. Without looking back, Adam ran to the door. This time it opened easily, and he burst out into the hallway, his heart pounding in his chest. The school was empty, the lights dimmed, but it was the real world, not that twisted nightmare he had just escaped. As he made his way toward the exit, something caught his eye. On the wall, right next to the door he had just come through, was a small plaque. It was old, tarnished, but the words engraved on it were clear. Adam felt a chill run down his spine. He didn't stop to think, didn't stop to question what he had just experienced. He just ran, his footsteps echoing in the empty hallway as he fled the school and the horrors it held. But as he reached the front doors, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed, that he had left something behind in that classroom, or maybe, just maybe, he had brought something out with him. And as he stepped into the cool night air, he couldn't help but glance back at the school, half expecting to see a shadowy figure watching him from one of the windows. but there was nothing. At least, not that he could see. But the whispers, they would haunt him forever. You've just survived another night of terror with me, the Tales Keeper, here on Nightmare for Giggles. But remember, the darkness of Westbrook High isn't so easily escaped. Adam's journey has only just begun, and there are more horrors lurking in the shadows, waiting for their moment to strike. If you're ready to face the next nightmare, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And until we meet again, sleep with one eye open, because you never know what's hiding in the dark.